Start from the beginning. About what time yesterday?
About 7 p.m. I left my house to go to the grocery store and buy my groceries for the week.
What store did you go to?
Target. And I was leaving my neighborhood when I saw this guy walking slowly in front of a house, looking towards the house. And I knew he didn't live there, so it made me a little suspicious, and then he kept staring around him, at me, and behind, and it arose my suspicion. And then it was raining, and he didn't look like he was in a rush to get out of the rain. He didn't look like he was hardcore physical, like exercising, that he was, running in the rain. He just looked out of place from what they've taught us in the neighborhood watch. So I drove past him, and I went to the clubhouse, and I called the non-emergency line. As I was on the phone with the non-emergency line, he walked past my car, and I lost visual contact of him. The operator asked me if I could get to somewhere where I could see, or at least give him a direction of where he was headed. I said yes, so I pulled out and I drove adjacent to the clubhouse. And I was unfamiliar with the street name. The operator asked me what street I was on, and it's not the street that I live on. It's a side street that cuts through the neighborhood, and I told them I didn't know. And they said, we need to know. When I was at the clubhouse, I gave them the clubhouse address, and they're like, we need to know what house you're in front of. And I said, listen, if you come to the clubhouse and go straight left, and you'll see me there. At this point, the guy walked around my car. He had his hand in his waistband. I didn't hear if he said anything. My windows were up, and it was raining, and I was on the phone with the non-emergency dispatcher. And then he disappeared back through a cut-through between the houses. While he was doing that, the operator asked me, they said, we need to know what exact address you're at. And all the houses I was next to was the back of the houses, and they're townhouses, so I didn't know the address. And they said, we need to know what street you're on or what address you're at. I think in the heat of the moment, I might have given them my street address. And they said, is that your home address or where you're at now? And I said, that's my home address. And I got out of my car to look for a street sign so that I could at least tell them what street I was on. And there was no street sign, and I couldn't make out the house in front of me because there was a big pickup truck there. So I knew if I saw him walk through the cut-through and then make a right behind other houses. I knew if I went straight and I didn't cut through where he went, that was the street that I lived on, Retrieview Circle. And I knew if I got to that street, I could tell them the exact house number and street that I was at. So as I walked through, I looked to my right where he had gone through. The operator said, are you following him? And I said, yes. They said, we don't need you to do that. And I said, okay. And I walked through to the other end of the street to give him the address. And as I was doing that, I said, he's not here anymore, he's gone. And they said, you don't see him? And I said, no, he's gone. And they said, do you still want us? And by this time, I'd gone to Retrieview Circle. And they said, do you still want us to send a police officer out? And I said, yes. And they said, well, where do you want the officer to meet you at? And I said, just tell them to go to the clubhouse, make a left. I didn't give them a description of my car. And I said, I'll meet them back at my car. So I walked through again, and as I was about halfway through, he appeared out of nowhere.
Were you still on the phone?
No, I hung up. They said, we have an officer en route, and I said, okay, thanks. after he asked me if I wanted an officer there. He said, we have an officer en route. I told him to meet me in my car, and I hung up. And I put my phone away. And when I got about halfway to my car from the street, again, behind the houses in a dark area, I heard him say, you got a problem? And I turned around and I saw him, and I went to go for my phone and call 911 instead of non-emergency this time. But I guess I didn't have my phone in the pocket that I thought I had it in. I had it in my jacket pocket, and I reached for my pocket, and I was looking for my phone, and he just punched me in the nose. And I fell backwards to the side. Somehow I ended up on my back. He ended up on top of me, and he just kept punching my face and my head, and I was screaming for help. And he told me, shut the up, and I kept yelling for help. And I got a little bit of leverage, and I started to sit up, and then he took my head and slammed it into the concrete several times, and each time I felt like my head was going to explode more than the last. I felt like I was going to lose consciousness, and I started screaming for help, and he covered my nose with one hand and my mouth with the other one, and he told me, shut the up, and I couldn't breathe. I was suffocating, and all I could think about was I didn't want him to keep slamming my head on the concrete, so I kind of shifted and squirmed my way out, not out from under him, but like to where, because the concrete was it was a sidewalk, and it felt like he only had my head on maybe a quarter of the concrete, and I could shift my way out and get onto the grass, where if he was slamming my head, it would just hit the grass and not the concrete. But when I shifted, my jacket came up and my shirt came up and exposed my firearm. And that's when he sat up and looked and said, you're going to die tonight, and I felt him take one hand off my mouth and slide it down my chest. And I just pinched his arm, and I grabbed my gun, and I aimed it at him and fired one shot. He kind of sat back and said, you got me, or you got me, you got it, something like that. And I thought he was saying that he heard the shot and that he was giving up. So I pushed him off me, and I don't remember if I pushed him off me or I pushed him back. Either way, I ended up on top of him, straddling him. He was up face down. And when he was hitting me in the face and the head, I felt like he was hitting me with something in his hands. So I thought he had a weapon, and I grabbed his hands and pushed them away from his body. And I said, stop. I said, stop, just don't move. And he was saying something like and cursing. I said, stop, don't move. And then somebody came, and they had a flashlight, and I thought it was a cop, and I said, I still had my gun in my hand as I was holding his hand out. And I said, are you a cop? And he said, no. And he said, I'll call them. And I said, I don't need you to call them. I already called them. They're on their way. I need you to help me restrain this guy. And he said, I'm calling the police. I'm already on the phone with them. And I got up off of him because he stopped struggling. And I thought he just stopped struggling. And then I holstered my weapon. I saw another flashlight, and I said, are you the police? Because I had blood all over my face and my eyes, and the flashlight, it was dark where I was, so the flashlight was really bright. And I said, are you the police? And he said, who shot him? And I said, I did. And I put my hands above my head like that, and I don't remember if he told me to turn my back to him and walk back towards him, but I turned my back to him, and I said, I did. And I raised my jacket, and I said, my gun's right there. I think I told him a few times, my gun's right there. It's right there. And he said, I know where it is. Just keep your hands on your head. Don't move. I said, can you just take my gun? And he said, I'm taking care of it. Just don't move. So I stopped. He handcuffed me. He took my hands down and handcuffed me. Oh, that's when he brought my hands down. I said, my gun's right there on my right side. Because I didn't want him to think that, I was going to grab for it or something. So he put my hands behind my back, handcuffed me, and then he took my gun. And I think it was the same officer that took me to his car. And paramedics got there. They went to check on him first, and then they came over and poured peroxide on my head, on the back of my head, felt my nose, and they told, I don't remember if it was a police officer or another EMS guy, they said his nose is broken and he's going to need one, probably 2 stitches on the back of his head. And they said, well, we're going to take him down for questioning. And somebody said, should we take him to questioning or CFR first? And they said, no, we'll take him to the station first. And I didn't realize at the time CFR was Central Florida Regional, the hospital, and I just got back in the back of the car and they brought me here.
Okay. Right, so that was it. Were you on the phone at the time when he was beating you?
No.
Okay, so there was no communication between you and the call center at that point?
No. I'm sorry. There was a guy that I couldn't really see because, like I said, there was blood in my eyes, and I saw somebody looking out through the sliding glass door, and I said, help me, help me. And I think he said, I'm calling 911. But the guy was beating me in the head and the face, but he might have been on the phone. So
there's a possible bystander there?
Yes.
Okay.
He might have been on the phone with 911. I don't know. But I was not communicating with the police at that time.